So, you're looking for more space and thinking about a home extension? My name is Patel. I'm an architect and co-founder of Formed Architects, and we have helped hundreds of homeowners in London with their house extensions and hope in this mini guide you can be on the right path to building yours. Before you start with a home improvement project where you're considering adding extra space, it is important that the space and impact of the existing house is well considered. The link with this and any extension can have a big impact and determines the success of any new space. From whether the extension will add value to your home to what size extension will be permitted, there are some key points to consider. Many extensions don't require planning permission, known as permitted development rights. Please check out one of our earlier videos to get more information on permitted development. There are strict criteria on what is considered permitted development, and it is important that you don't get caught out with this, which is why it is important to speak with an architect. There are some types of extensions that your local council planning team may not permit it under their local guidelines, but would be permissible under permitted development. So understanding the nuances will allow you to make the most out of what is possible. When thinking about extensions, it is important to think about how natural light will permeate the space and impact the existing house. If this is not considered, you could end up with a dark and often redundant spaces, as these do not benefit from natural light. This is particularly important in extensions that go beyond the rear wall of the existing house. You should also think about how sound will resonate in the space. Large, open-plan spaces can be great, but can also be echoey, and a lack of level of separation for different uses, which results in less flexibility than what is required, never bodes well if someone is clanking away in the kitchen cooking dinner and someone else is trying to attentively watch the TV. Inevitably, this can lead to the family being split into different rooms, and it is important to understand how the space will be used in the first instance and into the future to consider how harmony can be designed into the home. If you live in a conservation area or in a listed building, adding an extension may involve a further intensity in design considerations, and these will need to be designed in a sympathetic manner and often need a full planning application to be made or listed building consent. A pre-application may also be advisable in these instances, which will allow the proposal to be discussed informally with a council officer before a formal application is made. Quite often, in many of London's Victorian and Edwardian terraces, where rear gardens are small, single-storey rear extensions may not be viable. In these instances, where there is an existing outrigger portion, a side extension, often known as an infill extension, may be more appropriate. This can provide a greater width to the rear wing of the house by opening up the wall on the existing side elevation and creating one larger space between the two, old and new. Once you have understood what may be possible in terms of an extension, you'll want to fully understand budgets and how much an extension costs. This will of course depend on many factors and be relative to the particulars on what is around the site. Parking in many parts of London, when the build team may be multidisciplinary and include lots of trades, could involve upwards of 4 different cars and contractors, will reflect the cost of parking and often an allowance for any parking tickets in their cost before the project starts. One good tip here is to get the builder's vehicle details beforehand so you can provide visitor permits rather than them applying for suspension of parking or builder's permits, which the councils often charge a lot more for. Remember, in the end, this sort of hidden cost will be something that you'll be paying for. Consideration of the impact of both your extension and the duration of your build on the neighbours is important. We always suggest having a friendly word with the neighbours before any planning permission is submitted, so that you are aware of any concerns that they may have and can address them insofar as possible. This will not always be viable, but where a council consults neighbours when making a full planning application, be mindful that any objection they may have will only be upheld if grounded in policy. Often, neighbours can perceive an extension will block their light and object as a result. However, most councils will allow a set depth and width as long as your extension is within the criteria. Most councils will grant permission. Beyond planning permission, when it comes to neighbours, you may need to serve party wall notices, and these are legally binding agreements that seek to protect you and the neighbour from any damages from the building works. It is not a process to be feared, although it can be another upfront cost. In tandem, you'll want to ensure you comply with building regulations for the scheme before works commence. This can be undertaken with both private companies and the council, and involves an inspector visiting the home to determine the safety of the build periodically and within set stages with the build team. Depending on the size of the extension and what other work you are seeking to undertake, the extension could take upwards of 3 months to build, and you may need to factor in moving out during this time, in particular if you will not have an operational kitchen in place during the course of the build. Simple things like washing machines and things like that you might also want to think about. It is important to discuss the logistics of this with the build team at the outset, so that if you are planning to stay in occupation for part or all of the build, then you can consider the implications relative to both the build, budget and impact on basic functionality of the home, such as having running water throughout. Done well and in consideration of all of the above, a well-built extension can add value to a home, creating much needed space to provide additional flexibility. When done creatively, this can also enhance your well-being in a space and provide a harmonious family space. To summarise, before you start your extension project, take the time to find a good architect. Have a realistic time frame to get the paperwork in place and to undertake the build. And when selecting a contractor, speak to other architects they have used, as well as seeing current site and completed works. And if you manage all of these things, building works can be enjoyable and a pleasant experience. We hope you found this mini guide useful. We completely understand that undertaking a building extension project can be daunting and not something that you are likely to do often. If there is anything that you think would be helpful to know when starting your project, please let us know in the comments below. Stay tuned and subscribe for the next video in the series, where we will talk about the cost of house extensions.